Good morning. I am so excited to chat today with a guest. His name's Joey. He works with the NFL, and Joey and I connected over social, and I thought he had a really cool role and background. And so definitely wanted to bring him on to chat today about experience and how it kind of plays out in digital and how you can kind of bring in a customer into your environment and create an experience for them and definitely have it lead to some loyalty. So Joey, why don't you give us a little quick background on yourself, and then we'll go into some questions.
Great. Thanks, Joe. I'm Joey. As Joe mentioned, I work for the NFL. I'm the manager of club content strategy. And ultimately what that is I'm a league employee. But I work with all 32 clubs on a daily basis on digital strategy as it pertains to digital and social platforms. So I really focus on long form video, so CTV, YouTube. But over the years, I've done social strategy, SEO, a lot of various things that have to do with really how we can best optimize all of the club platforms. So obviously working with 30 different keeps everything. How I approach the Bengals is going to be different from how I approach Patriots, just to name two examples. But yeah, that's a rundown of who I am. I mean, at the end of the day, I think telling a story through data is really what I focus on a daily basis.
Yeah, I think that's kind of how a lot of people have moved in towards the directions in marketing is really kind of creating that connection point with content and data. I ran this survey on Twitter. It was probably like 2 months ago. And I said, if you could only have one, which would you have, content or data? And the survey actually ended up 50-50 with several hundred votes. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We live in a world, full of distractions and Slack notifications and email and social. How can you kind of cut through that as a brand and create that experience?
Yeah. So you cut out a bit there, but I heard we live in a world full of distractions, and I think that was one right there. But yeah, I mean, on the clubs and how they stand out, I think that a lot of folks are aware of their social presence. All 32 clubs have social presence, and I think I want to sprinkle a few club examples into this because I really think that could make my points come across as best as I can. So I think that originality. That's something that is thrown out quite a bit, but clubs staying true to their brand while having a good time at the same time is huge. I think showcasing player personalities. A lot of clubs do a phenomenal job of really going behind the helmet to attract the casual fan. I think that we're in a different position with all the players having equipment on. It's not as easy to really see them and get to know them as it is with, basketball players, for example. But really going behind the helmet and looking at the personalities of all these well-known players has really been drawing fans in, especially ones that aren't necessarily, massive football fans in the first place. One thing I wanted to mention is telling the truth, being authentic. I think something that really is thrown around quite a bit. I mean, I know that that's not new news for brands of all types, but for brands like the NFL and clubs in general, is the Browns. When they had one win a couple seasons ago, instead of sugarcoating it, they were honest with their fans. Approach where they weren't trying to make anything seem as if pulling strings or making fans think something different. They were very, very straightforward in their banter, a little bit of self-degradation, being honest with who they are, where they're at in with their club. It's huge to really make fans feel like they can trust you. And in that, developing your voice, bringing in the human element. The Chargers do a phenomenal job on social, making you feel like you're. So I think a world full of distractions, doing your best to develop your voice, develop your brand, and stay true to who you are at your core. And I think the clubs are doing a great job with that.
Great. That was a really good answer. I like what you said about kind of bringing that unique experience that really only you can provide for the consumer, which is, that in helmet, mic'd up, locker room stuff that people really want to see behind the scenes and kind of get the feel of the team that they're cheering for. How do you kind of, there's so much content and so many holes you can go down. How do you try and prioritize which things to show and which ones are working out best?
Which content and execution?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a good point, because obviously when it comes to a content execution, it's not necessarily going to be, everyone says content is king, and that's true, but it's the idea of content that's king. And what I mean by that is it's how you distribute that content, because how you take one specific content piece and distribute it is how you're going to really get fans to latch on. For example, if you're creating, if you, and I'll just use the example of McCaffrey, the running back for the Panthers, because he's just top of mind for some. He had a great fantasy week for me. But take a long form piece that you did behind the scenes with him. You're gonna approach that differently when you're thinking of posting it to YouTube as opposed to posting it to Twitter, posting it on Instagram stories. It's really about the avenue in which you get the content to fans. So when I approach a piece of content, it's really looking at it's not a one size fits all format anymore. It's kind of catering. It's a one to many approach, and so. One thing that I stress quite a bit, when working with the clubs, and they're all very, very well equipped and know this already, but it's working with them to distributing content in the right way. 6 to 8 minute videos on YouTube as opposed to clips on Twitter, things of that nature. Cool.
Yeah, so you really kind of just find ways to slice and dice it based on the medium. You take that, one long form piece and turn it into a blog post or a report and have a YouTube video and some social pieces. You really get that content efficiency going. With that, like, how can visuals and video, you mentioned YouTube and some other things. How can visuals and video in the day and age we have now really enhance or improve content that you're putting out?
Yeah. So how can visuals and video enhance that experience? I mean, one thing I wanted to mention is if done right, video and visual imagery can really strike an emotional chord that's only achievable through that method. Music, video, photo, like those are the most popular pieces of content that are consumed. And it's because it has the ability to really strike a chord in you that's emotional and that's engaging. And we've seen, as you're aware, maybe not, across the board, but when it comes to the league and the clubs, we've seen major year-over-year increases when it comes to, video being consumed as opposed to photo and article, and that just continues to grow. So visuals and video enhance, of course. I think that sometimes quality, if you can really create something of quality, like the Vikings, for example, I bring them up quite a bit because they create beautiful pieces of video, very, very well done. I'm always just totally captivated by what they do. But then on another note, sometimes, things in its simplest form is just as effective when it comes to video. That raw, uncut footage of, a player grabbing your phone at the end of the game and, congrats to Chargers Nation, we got that W, and then posting it straight to your feed while the feeling of excitement after a win is still raw and still real. It's again, it goes back to what I just mentioned before. It's catering to your audience, catering to the platform that you're posting. And it's really taking advantage. It's not always about making beautiful as you want to make it. Sometimes it is. But then it's also about, really you capture that emotional aspect as well.
Yeah, go into that maybe even a little bit more. Like, what's the process of like speed over quality, where you do have kind of like you specifically are working with the clubs, and you have in-game action happening. How do you kind of get something out there fast if people are like following it on Twitter or some other medium versus like, having that more quality piece kind of driving something?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that a big one is in game, right? So I feel like when it comes to Sundays or Mondays or Thursdays, depending on when you're playing, in game, surrounding game, folks, fans just want to know what's going on. So at that point, it's really about this. The social folks are on the field, capturing whatever they can, whether it's the actual highlight or the celebrations surrounding the highlight, everything pregame, postgame. Like I mentioned before, that example of the Chargers. When it comes to the game, it's just that organic content that happens that you can't predict. And that's usually, you want to get that up as quickly as possible because fans are literally sitting at home, in a day and age when not everybody has cable, they're looking to their phones and Twitter and different social platforms to get their updates, and not only updates, but actual updates from the players and from the sidelines, and making them feel like they're a part of the game. So when it comes to, the longer form pieces of content, the episodic pieces of content, those are over a long period of time. Those are incredibly popular and obviously very vital to a club. But those are, we find a lot of training camp episodic pieces, or draft episodic. And what I mean by that is really high quality video that you, of things, specifically a lot of stuff in season, but a lot of off season content as well when there's not as much happening on the field. So again, clubs have different video teams and different capabilities, but I think it really comes down to in season. There's a lot more of that speed, raw video. Let's just get it up. Let's go. Let's connect with the fans. And then, I think for the rest of the week and on the off season, when you have a little bit more time to fine tune, but again, it's all about a balance of having both, because fans want it all. So yeah. Yeah,
that's really cool. Is there almost, can you provide a structure to like real-time stuff? Like, I know when I was in like a war room for kind of like, we were chatting a little bit before where when I was with Adobe, we put out this Super Bowl content, that was referenced by a lot of top tier like press outlets. And so we were planning like to do this real time review of commercials because our Super Bowl was very ad focused. So it was like, these are the ads people want to see, and blah, 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 blah. So it was kind of like, I knew when the commercials were coming out. And so I had like my process to like respond and put data out there. Is there like a little bit of an editorial real-time calendar where you're like, okay, if someone gets a touchdown, this is the process, or if someone gets, a game-changing highlight or whatever, this is the process? Or is it very much just like based on experience and less about kind of like a process?
Yeah, I think you might want to maybe reach out to somebody at a club for more specifics there. What I know and from my experience, I was just in London for a couple of the games at Wembley, and over the years, whether it's Super Bowl or whether it's going to a game of a specific team I'm working with, really changes. I mean, I wish I could go into detail for you, but as somebody that works with all clubs and is more of a consultant to the clubs, you know, the process with every day. So I think that although I'm aware of what happens, it varies from club to club.
Sure.
That specific
Yeah.
process, whether you're posting in real time and you don't have any holes to jump through, and you have sign off to completely
Yeah.
do as
Right.
you will, or if you
Right.
have the powers that be that want to have more of a checks and balances. That's really on a club by club basis, in order to really do what they feel is best. So maybe
Cool.
that's more of a push to get someone from the clubs to come on next time.
Yeah, that makes sense. So outside of the NFL, what's a recent good experience you've had with a brand? And if it was like retail, what was the process like? What made it stand out to you? Did it make you more of a loyal customer? What's kind of an experience you've had in your own life?
Yeah, so I have time. Is very basic, and one is on, man. I this is super simple, but yesterday I ordered a baseball mitt for my nephew and a coloring book for my niece, and it was there within 16 hours. And the efficiency and the speed in which Amazon deliver, all for a relatively small fee once a year, is incredible. I've had great experiences with them. When it comes, on a different level, I'm a massive Lakers fan. Go Lakers, 15-2. But I just went to a game a week ago with a couple of buddies, and I was blown away by their in-game experience. And of course I'm a bit biased, but I've been to a lot of live games, and just from the way that they had entertainment set up, to the lighting, to the temperature in the arena, to the customer service, to the food. I mean, you pay a pretty penny, but it was just quite the experience. And they really and I think that they're also a lot more personal with how they're catering to people and fans, in game. So they have an app that you can download where you wanted to focus on the game necessarily, but someday I see how it would work. But it's ultimately a game where you can really be involved and send real-time photos and send updates and predictions, so that you can stay in tune with what's happening in the game, and then the Lakers game. So I think one thing that I won't go into details about, but that we work a lot on with the clubs, is in-game experiences. How do you personalize them to make fans want to come? I mean, because it's becoming easier to sit on our couch or wherever that may be, live NFL games on your, depending on where you are watching, coming up with different ways to get fans to want to actually go immerse themselves in the experience. That's a huge thing. I mean, some clubs have no problem selling tickets for years to come, and others have a harder time. So I just wanted to bring up the Lakers because and it really stood out to me as being a really awesome experience.
Cool. Yeah, I agree with you. I think sports is in a unique situation where you may have a new person you will have a new person every game, right? You don't have the same people at every single game, and it could be that person's first time. There was a time where growing up with Michael Jordan, and obviously I'm in Utah, so I'm a Jazz guy with Karl Malone and John Stockton. But I remember Michael Jordan saying that he he tried to play for like the kid that came to see him play that had never seen an NBA game before. So it's on like the player level where they like hopefully perform and aren't like sitting out a game for load management or whatever. But it's also also on the teams, to provide that experience, like you said, and really make it for people to come back. So I think that's a really interesting point. Well, Joey,
that's a bit of a touchy subject because my Kobe in 2016, I had me and my wife went to see Kobe one last time. He's my boy, and of course he didn't play. I had seen him before, but he didn't play, and so that was kind of brutal. But yeah, I mean, I totally feel what you're saying. It's making it personal. So how do you get him to come back?
Awesome. Well, Joey, I think we could talk all day. It's been great having you on. Maybe we'll have to do it again soon and talk a little bit more. Hope everyone has a good Thanksgiving holiday and enjoy the rest of your week. Thanks, man.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on, Joe.
Okay. See ya.
Talk soon.